Good evening. There we go. Well, we're grateful to be able to gather together tonight. The feelings that we bring into this space are all over the place right now. We're grieving, we're surprised, we're missing, but we're also going to celebrate. We're going to look back at a life well lived. We're going to share stories. Now, this isn't the funeral service, this is the prayer service. And a few of you might be wondering what exactly that is. About the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to be praying up here, and you're going to be staring at me, okay? It's not what's going to happen at all. I'm going to pray, and we're going to be able to, what I like to call an open mic night, okay? So I invite you to come up and share. If you do need a microphone brought to you, I can bring you a mic, but if you're able to, for visual and audio's sake, come on up here if you can. We want to be able to share stories. Now, I always say if you have some of those parking lot stories, maybe save them for the parking lot. But know that Ron Gadberry is a fantastic man who deserves to be sent off well. And that's what this is all about. So I'm going to open this up in prayer, and then we're going to get started. Creator God, I'm grateful today for light in our life. When I start to think about members of Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd that talk the talk and walk the walk, Ron Gadberry is one of those people. I'm grateful for the light that he was in my life, the light that he was within our congregation, the various schools that he taught at, the communities that he invested in. God, not everybody steps in and steps up. That's a person that did. And so we're grateful for the light that he was in our life. We're grateful for the opportunity to come together to share stories, to grieve, and to celebrate. It's in your name that we pray. Amen. All right, so this really is an open mic opportunity. And so the mic is right up here. The floor is open. Come on up. Let's share some stories. I know that we're grateful to have you here on behalf of Carolyn, her kids, and their family.
This isn't fair. I have notes. See, Dean called me and said, "Would you like to say something, Jerry?" I said, "Well, I don't like to speak in public, but I guess I will this time." But first of all, first thing I'd like to do is I would like to have all of the former wrestlers that wrestled with Ron, either in Moorhead or Hillsborough. Would you stand, please? All former wrestlers, would you stand? Look around, folks. What does that tell you, right? You know how many years ago it was for us? I'm not going to say because then you'll think I'm old. Yeah, Ron Gadberry. They're here for him and his family. The same family that was with us on our trips. Same wife that stood behind him like a rock. And all of us that are married, we know what the woman means in our life, right? We know what it takes to accomplish what we have. And it's because of wives like Carolyn that just, Ron loved her. And it was so obvious. It was fun to watch the children, especially when they were young, watching Ron get up out of his chair and run to grab one of the little ones who got away out toward the mat. So my name's Jerry Barnum, by the way. One of the, some people say notorious Barnum family. I was a spud wrestler, a neighbor, and a friend of their family for many years. First, I need to express to the Gadberry family my condolences, to say how sorry I am you lost this wonderful, gentle, kind, loving man. My heart goes out to you. I pray for God's peace. And I hope you find joy and comfort in the memories that you share together. So my memories go back to 1965, when my brothers were asked by Coach to come out for wrestling, and Jim was a senior, Lonnie was a sophomore. Neither had stepped on a mat before. And you can imagine what it took at a high school level, being a rookie on a mat, going against people who knew all the moves, of course. But Coach worked with them, diligently worked with them, and they were successful, very successful. And we can attribute that to, those of you who know them, we can attribute that to their strength as well. In a good tight waist. Brother Jim broke a wrestler from Detroit Lakes. He put a tight waist on him, snapped his ribs. That's how strong he was. Brother Lonnie, the night before he couldn't wrestle anymore because he ruptured his kidney his senior year, beat a state champion from North Dakota, and he would have really done well. I was fortunate to have some really good teammates. When I first started, I was kind of like Don Knotts, I wrestled 95 in ninth grade, and then 112 and 120. And my senior year, I was a whopping 127. And I really didn't have a lot of strength. But Coach and my dad got on me and said, you got to work. You got to work at it, Jerry. You got to get strong. You got to keep working. And my dad would always say, Jerry, do you do your push-ups? Guess who else would say that? Coach, Jerry, do you do your push-ups? Yeah, okay. And fortunately, we did pretty well. 4 of us went to state for the first time as multiple team members. We won the region. First time that Moorhead ever won the region in wrestling under Coach Gadberry. My brother Stan was the first state champ for Moorhead, again, because of Coach Gadberry. So we owe so much to him. But I think what I owe more to Coach Gadberry is his example, is the way he lived his life, the way that he treated people, the way that he would encourage us. It's hard. If everyone here that's a wrestler knows how hard it is to walk out on a mat by yourself, spotlight's on you. There's no other teammates, folks. It's just you. If you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. But Coach would get you ready, He would encourage you and talk to you. Okay, try this, remember to do this, be sure to do this, and have that calming effect to kill those butterflies that were in there. And, win or lose, Jerry, you learn something, right? If you win, you learn something. If you lose, you learn something. What do? You just keep trying. You keep working hard. What a life lesson, folks. Carried that with me my whole life. Marine boot camp, wherever I went, I carried that lesson to do my best. As a man, he was an example for us to emulate. His warm, welcoming smile, his affable nature, greeted everyone he met. He was a giver. He gave his heart, he gave his soul, he gave his time to his team, to his family, to his classroom, to his church, to his community. And we all know that this world is a better place because of Ron Gadberry. May we all be more like Ron. God bless his memory.
Thanks, Jerry, for being brief. No, first off, my name's Joel Vettel, and I had the privilege of wrestling for Coach Gadberry in Hillsborough. And he was more than a coach. He was a mentor and a great friend. And when I was thinking about some of the things that I wanted to say about him, I was often reminded of different aspects of the life lessons he taught me. And some of the things I remember are better said by other people than me. So there's a story that I always talk about, and it's one I've used many times in my life. And it's a parable, and it's a man, he's walking in the mountains of Italy. And as he's walking through there, he looks down into this quarry, and he sees these two gentlemen pounding rocks. And they look like they're doing identical work. But he can notice that one of the guys is extremely happy, and the other guy seems extremely angry. So he got curious, and he walks down and asks the first man, the angry man, he said, "Sir, may I ask what you're doing?" And the guy looks at him and very, very sharp eyes and turns to him and he says abruptly, "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm pounding big rocks and making small rocks." So he went to the next man, the happy man. He had a gleam in his eye and looked enthusiastic about what he was doing. And he said, "Sir, may I ask you what you're doing?" And he looked him right in the eye and he said, "I'm building cathedrals." What does that mean? What it means to me is what Ron did each and every day. He had the ability to build cathedrals. And it wasn't his teaching, it wasn't his coaching. His cathedrals was every person that he impacted. People that he was able to give back in a way that most of us will never be able to do. His quiet demeanor, his ability to really have relationships and different relationships with each one of the people that he encountered. His daughter Karen and I were talking the other day at the hospital, and she came to me and she said, I was a little angry. And she goes, "I remember when we were little, the first time I saw my father having a different relationship with somebody that was young." And I said, "What did you mean?" And she said, "You had the ability to say things to my father," and I was a precocious kid, that she thought, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that." But what Coach did, what he had the ability to do, was recognize that that's what I needed at the moment. That's the relationship I needed to be better. And the life lessons that he's quickly taught me were so, so important. One of the things I've always remember about him was his ability to take a life lesson and put it into very simple terms. And one of the things that he said, and he said it often, he would look at a young man, and he would say, that wrestling doesn't need that young man, but that young man needs wrestling. And what he meant by that, the life lessons that wrestling taught him, that Coach Gadberry taught, were so important to the growth of people. And I look across the room and I looked at a number of other places that he's been and he's impacted. Those are the things that you can remember. That's his legacy. That's truly who he was. He taught life lessons, created great young people, and he did it in a way that wasn't loud by volume, but it screamed excellence. And that's what I'll always remember about him. And on a personal note, I am so thankful. I owe a lot of my life to people that have impacted me. And there is nobody that I can say other than my father that impacted me more than Coach Gadberry. Thank you again. God bless you, Coach Gadberry. God bless the Gadberry family. Thank you for allowing him to be part of my life. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Victor Tigan. I also had the opportunity to tell Ron that he was such an important mark on my life and how I was able to go forward as a young man to live a life in helping others. Ron also was more than just a wrestling coach like you just heard. He helped us to grow to be team workers and future leaders. And he never forgot the name of one person that ever wrestled for him. He was a fantastic person. And one thing that I asked people at our church to join the choir, and one day I asked Ron and Carolyn to join our choir, and they did. They only lasted for a couple of years, but it was a fantastic time to have Ron in our church choir. And then he was not only a mentor to me, but he became a special friend. And such a special friend he was that my birthday was one day after Thanksgiving this year, and he knew what day it was. He calls me at 7:30 in the morning and he says, "Are you awake yet? I want to wish you a happy birthday." So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that he did. He showed us all how to love and how to be just great friends with him. He just grabbed my heart every time I saw him. So thank you very much for everything.
My name is Rob By, and I was class of 81, a wrestler for Ron. And this last year, Carolyn came into our store one day with a box full of old clippings. And I happen to have a rep in our store that's from Alexandria. His son is a wrestler, football player there. Now he's at Moorhead State playing football, and a very good wrestler. And Carolyn came in and brought this box, and it was full of old clippings, not of mine, because I had none, but of my kids, because my wife's a Borgan, and so they were gifted athletically. And that goes really good at the Borgan family reunion stuff. They love that when I talk that way. Anyway, but there were clippings. There was some articles on my father, who had passed away in '99, on some work-related things that he was in the paper for. The birth notice of our oldest son, John, from 1990 was in there from the Fargo Forum. The birth notices from Eric and Matt, my other two sons, just a little birth notice in there. We took pictures, and you could send them into the form. They would put them in there on their first birthday and things like that. These were cut out of my oldest boy, John. There was an article when Jana and I bought our company from my dad that had been in a publication. That was in there. And then a bunch of sports stuff from my boys was in there. And Ron was out in the car, but came in kind of later, I think, to rush Carolyn along because, as it turns out, I want to visit, right? So he kind of made an appearance, and anyway, so this rep, Brian from Alexandria, he's looking through this stuff, and he's like, "Wow, you played football and wrestled at Moorhead High, and this is your coach's wife kept all this stuff." He's thinking I'm a dude, right? And so I said, "How many?" I said, "This is pretty cool." He said, "This is pretty cool. Wow. What coach's wife, what coach's family does this?" And I said, "What would you imagine, Brian, how many state wrestling championships do you think I had?" Because I never talk about it and things like that. Don't like to brag about stuff. How many championships? I said, not even championships. How many state appearances do you think I had while I was a wrestler for Ron? I said, in fact, let's go to this. How many wins do you think I had at Moorhead High as a varsity? In fact, let's even go further than this. How many losses do you think I had at Moorhead High as a spud wrestler, based on what you see here? And he couldn't guess. I said, 0. I had 0 losses as a varsity wrestler at Moorhead High. Wow. How many wins? Same number. I never wrestled a varsity match at Moorhead High. I was a JV guy. And yet, I got a box of stuff going way, way back that you would have thought I had won state championships, donated tons of money to the program, and done all sorts of wonderful things. And I was just a kid on a wrestling team in Moorhead. But Ron knew that wrestling wasn't a contact sport, it was an impact sport. And he had impact on all of us. One story from when I was in school. Senior year, I didn't go out for wrestling. I'd been wrestling since 4th grade in elementary school. And I didn't go out my senior year, and I wanted to play college football, and I was going to lift and all this stuff. 2-3 weeks in, my buddy Pat Emerson comes over. He says, "Hey, Coach Gadberry is looking for you, wants you to come out for wrestling." And I'm like, why? I mean, really, I couldn't figure it out. One day, he catches me down in the locker room, and he says, "Hey, come on in here." So I go in the coach's room, and he said, "Rob, you got to come out for wrestling." And I said, "Coach Gadberry, am I ever going to wrestle a varsity match?" "No, you're not good enough for that." And that's just how he said it. And if I would have got any other answer, I'd have known it was a lie. Because I knew the guys wrestling around me, there was nowhere for me to go to get on varsity. A couple guys would have had to get hurt, and even then, I think he could have shifted a few more guys around. And so I think he'd have made that work. But he said, "No, you're not good enough for that." That's not why we need you, though. We need you because the guys on the team like you. And you keep things light in the weight room. And you can wrestle a lot of different weight classes with guys in practice. And ultimately, finish what you started. You've been here a long time. Finish what you started. That was it. I went home, told my folks, I'm going out for wrestling. And I did. He told me he'd take care of me, he'd get me a bunch of JV wrestling matches and that. So I wrestled with no pressure at all of any kind, and I just had a ton of fun. And that year we went to state, and he brought me along on the team, and I got to sit on the bench and do all that kind of stuff, and that was a lot of fun. But ultimately, and I've told this story around Ron, and he doesn't really like it when I tell the story, because it feels like I'm trying to brag on him or something, and he didn't like that. But ultimately, it's one of the things in my life, that kind of brutal honesty of, I don't need you to do this, I need you to do this, and here's where your value is, and we need you. And when you hear that as a 17-year-old, there's impact and power in that. That's what Ron gave me, and I'll carry that for the rest of my life. And I manage men and women at work, same deal. I need them for certain things. They know that they're cared for, they know they're loved. But Ron was one of the guys, one of the men in my life, along with my dad, that had that impact. And I appreciate that you guys shared them with us. Carolyn, love you guys. All right? God bless you.
Hi, Carolyn. My name is Kathy Vollen, and I married into this clan. And when my husband Matthew introduced me to Carolyn and Ron eyeballed me and said, "Well, I'll tell you one thing, you got a project." And as I'm listening to the gentlemen that have shared this evening, I've been thinking about how we really all are projects. And the great thing about Ron that I experienced as a wife and now as a grandmother, I'm here to represent this current generation of kids. Bridger and Croy know this couple so well, my grandsons, and you were there always to cheer them on. And it's our joy to worship with you here at Good Shepherd. But thank you for how you look at all of us, and we all are projects. We're all loose ends, but you've loved us into the kingdom, and we're grateful for that. So God bless to you, the whole family.
Hello, I'm Greg Morlock, class of 75, and I don't know how many of you really ever were motivated by Coach Ron, in the wrestling room. But one story that comes to mind is we were part of a large sophomore class that got to share the room with Stan Barnum, who would end up becoming Moorhead's first state champion. And as things so happened, I was about a weight class below him, so I would get paired up periodically when we would do some live wrestling. Well, it came time to do some live wrestling, and we were going pretty hard at it, and as things would have it, I shot in on Stan, took him down, and put him on his back. Ron walks over to me, and he goes, "Greg," he says, "do you realize what you did? You just put Stan Barnum on his back and you got back points." And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I know what's coming next. He turns over to Stan. "Stan, you just let a sophomore put you on your back." You can about imagine what the rest of the wrestling practice was about. Greg was just cannon fodder for Stan that day.
Well, this is somewhat difficult, but I love this family so much that I'm sure I'll get through it. But knowing Greg Morlock, and we grew up on the same block with the Gadberry family. I'm Kevin Mann, graduated in 1981, and I didn't think Rob I was nearly that bad until the memory came back to me now. But we grew up with Jerry and Stan Barnum lived right behind us, and got into wrestling at a young age, and Mark Gadberry was a year younger than me, and John Gadberry was a year older, and we were very close friends. And so when I got to junior high and high school, I would go over to the Gadberry house, and on every Sunday it seemed like, and I wanted to talk wrestling with a coach, and I remember he would talk to later in life telling me that, all I wanted to do all my life was take a nap on Sunday. And I'd be at their house and I'd say, "Let's talk some wrestling here, because wouldn't you want a couple more hours of that in your week?" And anyway, so we get done with wrestling, and my sister was 4 years younger than me, and she was going to school at UND. And I dropped her off at school, and I'm driving back, and I thought, oh, I bet the Gadberrys would love to see me on this Sunday. And so I stopped at their farm in Hillsboro and knocked on the door, and Carolyn said, "You're just not going to believe who's here to talk wrestling with you." But anyway, I would echo so many things that Joe Vettel and Jerry Barnum and others, but the life lessons, not only from wrestling, we certainly can see that, but he was much more than that to me, really a second father figure, and I can probably say that comfortably for every wrestler that wrestled for him, that they felt that way. It was whether you needed another pat on the back or whether you needed to be told, "Get your act together." He was willing to do all of those things and be that tough. And I've taken just some of the things that he has meant to all of us in my life and think how much integrity he carried himself with. I mean, this man was so principled, and if you couldn't gain something from knowing someone like Coach Gadberry, you really missed the boat. But I know all of us that are here feel very privileged to have had him coach us, mentor us, and be a friend, and I will forever be grateful for that. So thank you very much.
been a long time since I've been in a room where most of the people know me as Mark Hamry. I also have another name, Tank McNamara, and I was a wrestler and able to broadcast Mr. Gadberry's matches when I was a young broadcaster, and had a lot of fun and had a lot of stories with the guys here. And Brian Mueller brought up the time Mr. Gadberry had to miss his first duel in 30-some years, I think it was, and we were up in Warren, and he asked me if I wanted to drop down a couple weights right before Christmas to certify for the year, and I said, sure. See, Coach McLean's already got a smile on his face, so it was a rough couple of days. I think I had 6 pounds in the last 2 days, and it was probably the toughest thing I had to do. So it was a Saturday. We get up there, and the scale is not dropping in my favor, and I'm running out of time. So someone had heard that if you stand on your head, it'll defy the law of gravity, and I needed every ounce I could, so I didn't have any clothes on, and Coach McLean and Coach Foss had me by my ankles up against the wall, and with about 20 seconds to go, I ran over to the scale, and yeah, it broke, but not by much, but it did. And then I remember that Monday, Coach Gadberry asked, "So how did it go? Did you make it?" And I go, "We probably did something you've never seen or heard of before, but we did it." So it was too bad he wasn't there for that. So I think I was a better broadcaster with wrestling than wrestling, because I always joke that I knew all the light counts and all the ceilings in the gyms in the Red River Valley. And Cavalier has 10, by the way. Larimore, big gym, they have 20. But it was fun to visit with Coach Gadberry on a different level after the day and get his perspective on how the day went. And I think our relationship grew more there. You talk about the life lessons. I think we can all say he probably was our first true mentor in life outside of our family. You learned to respect people. You were a gentleman. We had a rule that if your match didn't go your way, you didn't throw your headgear, and I don't think anyone ever did, and we didn't want to find out what would happen if you did. You wouldn't want to be caught outside without a stocking cap on. I don't think we ever tried that, because you knew you probably were going to face the consequences on Monday. But he was a quiet leader. I remember Saturdays he'd sit there with his notepad and take notes throughout the day, and then Monday and Tuesday he would come around individually and work with you and visit with you about the day, and that just shows the personal effect that he showed everyone, and everyone was an equal in his wrestling room. And the last 8 years I've been able to be a member here at Good Shepherd and see the Gadberries on Sunday, and it's been fun to reconnect with you guys and have our visits, so I'm glad we had those opportunities. So we're going to miss them around here. Thank you.
Think these things will catch sniffles too there, or it's a little cold? I got all 6 for my 6 years in Hillsborough, so blue and white. You know, looking back, my name is Brian Mueller. Wrestled for Coach Gadberry in Hillsborough, and as a young kid, going on the wrestling mat for one of my first times, I looked up at him and headgear on, and he's like, "Believe in yourself." Looked around, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go out on the mat and see what I got here." And I was like, "You could have given me something besides just believing in myself. I just learned to tie my shoes yesterday." You know, as I take that with me, you know, in my personal and professional career, some of my biggest matches of my life, knowing Coach Gadberry believed in me. He believed in all of us, right, that were wrestling for him. I think many of us before we believed in ourselves, you know, as we stepped out on those mats. And just the other day when I visited with John and Carolyn and spent time with them, I left there and I went to work that day, and then I came home and my wife's like, "Hey, you went and saw Coach today?" I'm like, "Yes, I did. I can't say enough of what he's done to help me in my career. And I know it's his last couple days here on earth. And I know he believes in me more than you still do as my wife of 21 years. A couple of the life lessons that I've taken with me throughout my career, do the right thing even when no one's looking, right? And just the kind of guy he was, the morals and the ethics and the things he instilled on his wrestlers, was second to nobody. When I was a 7th grader, I and Chris Wilson qualified for state, and back then we took a bus or some vehicles, and Coach goes, "You know what? You're gonna be riding with me and Carolyn." I said, "Well, I'm the neighbor kid that lives down the road, and every time Carolyn drives by, my dad goes, 'If you see a cloud of dust and a white car coming from the west, get away from the road.'" I've seen her car leave the road many a times where I could see air under all 4 tires at the same time. I was like, "Wow, okay, I'm gonna ride with Carolyn. This is gonna be good." You know what else rides with Carolyn? Her chocolate chip cookies. I had 1 or 2, right, Carolyn? You know what? And those rides, those times that we got to spend with them, I cherish those all the time. I feel bad for the Gadberry family. At times they probably had dinners without Coach. In Hillsborough, when the kids were growing up and moved out of the house, Carolyn was probably waiting, and just so you know, we were doing push-ups until Coach got tired of watching us. And he doesn't get tired very easily when he's mad. So we did them for quite a while. But, one of the last things that I remember when I left Hillsborough was after state, we kind of have a send-off, and Coach Gadberry, said I was lucky to be a coach of Brian. I was, lucky to have NDSU. He was going to NDSU, and NDSU was lucky to have him. And, since that time, in the last 20-some years since then, I can tell you grandkids, I was lucky to be coached by Coach Gadberry. You were lucky to have the grandpa that you had, the kids, the dad that you had, and obviously Carolyn, the husband that you had. And I hope my wife loves me like Carolyn Gadberry loved Ron Gadberry till the end. So God bless your family.
So, for those of you who don't know, my name is Joey Rail. I am Karen's second, and we were the first generation that introduced Grandma and Grandpa to the hot, disgusting, murky room that was the swimming pool. We didn't wrestle, sadly. So, one thing I wanted to offer you was, instead of the perspective of a wrestler or an athlete or a student, was the perspective of a family member and a grandson. That perspective was that of each and every one of you, because I had people telling me day in, day out, every time we made it to Fry and Pan, every time I went to church with them, it was always, "Hey Ron, how's it going, Ron? Hi Ron, how's it going?" We couldn't get anywhere without somebody saying hi to Grandma or Grandpa. But I'm going into teaching, and recently I kind of thought about why I wanted to, and a lot of it is because of him. I got to see, like I said, these perspectives. I got to see how many people he's impacted, how many people he has changed, mentored, taught. You knew him by 3 different names, 4 different names: Grandpa, Dad, Mr. Gadberry, Coach Gadberry. And the kind of life he led is the kind of life that I wanted to lead. And I know how dearly my mom cares for him and how dearly my grandmother loves him. And I just wanted you guys to know that as a grandson, I was wholly proud of my grandfather. And I know each of you were proud of him as your mentors, as your coach, and as your friend. Thank you.
My name is Mark McLean, and I was a longtime assistant coach with Ron. We had a lot of good times together. He taught me a lot of stuff, and I think I taught him a lot of stuff too. Ron would delegate to me a little bit. As a coach with him, he'd say, "You see that kid over there? That's your project. It's your job to make him a good wrestler." And then we had a couple other coaches come in after that, and that was my line. "That kid's your project. You just pass it down the line." But I was kind of like a wrestling partner for Ron a little bit, because every time we had a match, we're sitting next to each other, and if you've ever watched him, he didn't sit still. So we ended up, every time we went to sit in the corner, we each grabbed our chair and moved it over about a foot. So we didn't end up shoulder to shoulder or rubbing into each other, and so spent a lot of time in the corners, a lot of time in the locker room, a lot of time hotel rooms. We shared hotel rooms. You learn a lot about a guy when you spend that much time with him. I learned a lot of great things. I learned what kind of a man he is. He was pretty wonderful. And one of the things I think too, as a coach, he'd do a lot of handshaking. And if you know anything about Ron, he had kind of a wave like this. And it took a special talent to be able to wrap that little finger around. And if he didn't quite get it, he got some pretty strange looks from guys when he got his little finger trapped in there. But he taught me so many things. I could go on forever of all the good things that he taught me as a coach. I just looked at him and marveled at the way that he would sit down. He was a pencil and paper guy, and he'd start looking at each wrestler, and he could figure out the score up to, I would say, 3 points, win or lose. And he'd say, "We can win this match if this happens. We got an outside chance." But he was never, ever, I don't think, more than 5 points off on a match, figuring out the pins, figuring out the decisions, the wins, the losses. And he knew his game. And he knew how to talk to people. He knew how to get what he needed to get out of his wrestlers, out of his team. And I am just thankful to have spent as much time with him as I did. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Pete Seljevold, and I'm just here. A lot of you have talked about the impact Ron has had on you as a teacher and a coach and all those things. I have a little different perspective. As a matter of fact, Ron and Carolyn were probably my parents' closest friends growing up. Spent a lot of time together, had many, many meals, thousands of cups of coffee together. And Carolyn refers to me sometime as her fourth son, because I spent a lot of time at their house and even spent some holidays with them. So it was just a wonderful experience knowing the Gadberrys. And, you look at people in the community, and you look at people in your life, and you go, "I want to be like that person," or "I really like that person." And Ron was one of those people for me. Just the way he was, just an extraordinary human being. He would catch up. He would know what was going on in our lives at all times. Maybe you haven't seen him for a long time. He would know about my daughters or what's going on. I don't know. Do you guys have some secret connection? I know you're on Facebook, but they just always seemed to know what was going on. And that was just a comfort to me. I was surrounded by a lot of coaches growing up, with my dad being the activities director. And Ron and Carolyn just really stood out. They were always around. Dinners, down at the lake, all kinds of different things. Not always on time, but you were always there. So I was telling John earlier, I never saw Ron get too excited or too down or anything. He's just real steady. But one time I did see him mad, and he was mad at me. This was back in the day at the old Good Shepherd Church, where you could sign up to do the readings every week. So I don't know, we were in junior high or something, so some of us thought it'd be funny to write somebody's name in. So we put Ron Gadberry's name in there. And it was time for the reading, and nobody stepped up, and all of a sudden you heard this shuffling, and Ron sprinted up and did the reading. I don't know if he caught wind it was us that did it, but he kind of looked at me a little funny after that. So I think he knew what was going on. But bottom line is just Gadberry's thanks for being a part of my family. Ron and Carolyn, it's just been extraordinary to have you around so often. And when I grow up, I do want to be like Ron Gadberry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Emerson, class of '82. I'm grateful to see my former '81 and '82 teammates here. I just wanted to share something because I was kind of a happy accident. I was a basketball player, and I said to myself and to a friend of mine, going into 10th grade, if I get cut from the basketball team, I'm going to go out for wrestling. Thank you, Moorhead High School basketball coaching staff, because cutting me from basketball was one of the best things that ever happened in my life, because it brought me to Ron Gadberry's wrestling room. It brought me to their family, lifetime friendships, all of the lessons all of the other wrestlers have talked about. But one of the best things is one of my best friends is Mark, and we were college roommates, young adult roommates. Heck, even Karen stayed with us when we were young adult roommates. And so I've had a lifetime of friendship with Mark and John and Dean and Karen. And Carolyn, I didn't bring my nose warmer, but it's in my memorabilia kit. So I do want to just say thank you so much to your family for embracing me as sort of this odd, like, okay, you're a basketball player, now you're a wrestler. And I got a chance to have some really good success because I had great coaches. And one thing Ron did really well was pick great assistant coaches like Wayne Anderson, who I saw here tonight. And just so many great experiences, getting to see Mark's children and seeing Ron and Carolyn at every one of their graduation celebrations. It's just cool stuff. So thank you, everyone, and God bless you.
Hello there. My name is Mike Fraser, class of '81. And like many of you who wrestled under Coach Gadberry, I feel blessed to have been part of the wrestling family. Just a quick story, as I was kind of, for whatever reason, disconnected. I think because I wasn't on social media or whatever, I was not able to get back to a lot of the Moorhead events that were going on, even though I just lived in Wisconsin. But I was fortunate enough, made it back here Christmas time for that last alumni meet before they took down the old gym, and was able to make it over thanks to Kevin Mann and Carolyn for setting that up. Got over and chatted, had a great visit with Coach Gadberry, and just a wonderful time. But I was feverishly looking at home before, because I knew this was coming up, looking for my nose warmer from Carolyn. Couldn't find it. But what I did find as I was going through all my stuff from back in the day was this letter that I'd hung on to, and I was a ninth grader, and it was Coach Gadberry had written it, and it was all typed up, sent to me, and the envelope, Mike Fraser, and I'm like, I was, again, a ninth grader. Who gets mail as a ninth grader? But here was a coach from the high school sending me a letter saying, looking forward to you joining the team. You should be doing your sit-ups, your push-ups, and all this stuff, which was awesome. But I hung on to that letter, and it just, again, it sort of epitomizes what Ron was all about, and that was connecting with everybody at a very personal level. And I just can't say how much I feel blessed to have been part of that wrestling family, and God bless the Gadberries. Thank you so much for letting me be part of your family as a wrestler at Moorhead High. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Brad Carr. I coached for Ron and Mr. Shelito. I coached in 77, 78, and 79. And I came tonight because I knew there'd be this much love in the room. And it is just amazing to come to any of these things and see how everybody is and how they can have so much fun and remember all these things from the past. It was just a blessing. I went to work out with these guys one day and ended up coaching for 3 years with them. And I had a lot of long bus rides with Ron. He was a talker like you couldn't believe. I learned more in some of those trips. And I grew up in Battle Lake. I never got to be a wrestler for Ron, but I wish I had. And I always told the kids that, you guys don't know how lucky you are. And this place is just amazing. I mean, the Anviks, the Barnums, Vollins, Frasers, Wentz, Morlocks. I could go on and on and on. I wrestled a Nerby and a Lopez in high school. But I tell you, we always wanted to beat Moorhead. They were so good. And I couldn't understand why people didn't like them, because the coaches, actually, I can remember one time, and I hope Jim Garrity isn't here. If he is, I'm sorry, Jim, but I beat Jim in a match when I was wrestling for Battle Lake as a sophomore, and he was a senior, and both Ron and Harris came up to me and said, man, you really killed that guy of ours, and I just thought, these guys would talk to me? I couldn't believe it. And I always wanted to do something with Moorhead, and then that chance came, and I got to do it. And it was probably one of the best things in my life. I mean, just like a lot of guys came up here and said today, what a great thing this has done for my life. I feel the same way. And I really just wanted to come up here so I could get one more hug from Carolyn. So thanks for everything, Carolyn. Thanks for the Gadberry family. I know Ron is just unbelievably happy. I got to know Dean and John in my life, and it was really a blessing to me. We did a little fishing together, and we had just wonderful times. And every time I come to any Moorhead event, I get here, and I just get lost with the conversation. So thank you, all you guys.
Well, I had one other thing I was going to share from Pastor Joe Johnson, but One of the wrestlers stole my sheet, and I'm not interested in a fight. So, here's the reality, folks. So many stories have been shared that continue to point to a life well lived. I want to encourage you, within the story of life, continue to live a life like Ron, within your own stories. You still have chapters that are unfolding. You still have an opportunity to pour into the lives of multi-generations. You still have the opportunity to say yes, to serve, to volunteer. I'm going to encourage you to do that. Even though Ron didn't want to read up here and probably didn't want to sing in the choir, he still showed up time and time again. And so I want to encourage you, whatever circle you find yourself in, continue to live a life like Ron Gadberry. I know that we had an opportunity for some of us to share. Keep telling your stories. Not right now, but continue to find those opportunities to tell those stories. Continue to reach out to these kids and grandkids. Continue to reach out to Carolyn and remind her how much she's loved, how much she matters, because you do. And Carolyn, I'm going to encourage you to be open to that love, because I know it's going to be overwhelming from time to time. But this room is packed right now because they want to support your family and because they want to celebrate a life well lived in Ron Gadberry. And that's what happened. So thank you for coming this evening. This is concluding our prayer service, and we want to invite you to join us tomorrow morning as well as we celebrate the life of Ron Gadberry at 11 a.m. here at Good Shepherd. Receive the benediction. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, all God's people said,